Hello, so in today's video we're going to be taking the house that we modeled recently for one of our short form videos and painting it in this piece of software called 3D Coat. If you didn't see the video, it's just, I have it here. This is a model we made. It's just sort of, it's a model of the basic starting house in Stardew Valley, if you've ever played that game. It's one of my favourite games. I play it quite a lot, and this is the house that you start with. And I thought it was a pretty nice design, so I kind of wanted to just make it in 3D. I've got like the logs in here and stuff, and it was a bit tricky because like it's a 2D paint, it's a 2D image, 2D pixel art, so translating that to 3D, it doesn't always fit one-to-one. So I kind of just tried to match it as best possible, and I figured in this video we would just take it into this software called 3D Coat and paint it. If you've never used 3D Coat, it's sort of like Substance Painter in some ways, except you can do quite a lot more in 3D Coat. It's also got sculpting tools. You can do hard surface modeling here, though I've never tried it. I've briefly done the sculpting. I'm mainly just familiar with the painting. So I'm just going to show you kind of how I would do that. And we use 3D Coat to paint some of our assets. Not all of them, it really depends. If they need hand painted textures, then we'll come in here and paint them, but a lot of the time we do procedural stuff in Arnold with the shaders. I'm just going to go ahead and pick a 4K texture map here. I have this house, the UVs are just across a couple UDIMs, so I need to take this import tile as UV sets. Okay, so if we bring that in, it might take a second because it's not the heaviest asset in the world, but all the planks I modelled individually. I don't know whether that was a good idea, but I just ended up doing it at the time. I think it looks cool. Okay, so I feel like if you've never used this before, you probably could pick it up quite quickly. They have just, you know, standard things you would expect. Layers, painting objects. This just shows us everything, right? Like, you can see all the geo here that I made in Maya, and you can just turn those on and off or lock them if you don't want to paint on them. And you've got your layers here and like the opacity, depth opacity, all of that stuff. You also have the smart materials tab. This is where you've got all your PBR textures. They have a decent amount of built-in ones, some that come stock with the software, but I like to add a lot of my own. I think today I'm just going to use the built-in ones just for the purpose of this video. And so if you want to do something like this, you can find the same materials. What you can do, though, is you can see I've got my own tabs here. This is for a project I did. This is also for a project I did, but like things like cartoon, ceramic. Actually, I think that's for a project I did too. But cartoon, dirt, leaks, leather, metal, those are all just in the software by default. So I'll try to use those. If you're not sure what a PBR material is, it is basically just an object. It's called physically based rendering. That's what PBR stands for, and it just means that you break things down into a few different texture maps, right? Like you have the color or the diffuse, the roughness, the metalness, and the bump, and then those four things sort of combine and complement each other to make a realistic looking image. Everything sort of works together rather than layering up different things. It's a pretty cool way to work. A lot of the time was used in games more than film and TV, but over time it's become more adopted by film, I believe. Okay, so let's start with this. Whenever you bring a model into 3D Coat, first thing you want to do is come over to Edit and go to Calculate Curvature. I'm not entirely sure what this does, to be completely honest with you, but I think this sort of calculates the shape of the geometry, right? And if any of the normals are smoothed on the edges, and that will let some of the smart materials, like some of these materials will automatically add wear and tear to the edges, especially if it's like a metal material or something like that. And this just helps the software know where to add that wear and tear. So you can kind of briefly see it there. And then the next one is calculate occlusion. So this will create an ambient occlusion pass. And you don't have to use it, so you can turn it off. A lot of the time I'll turn it off because I don't really like having ambient occlusion baked into my models, but you have to have this on to use some of the smart materials for some reason. We are getting some weird artifacts on there. That will happen sometimes with ambient occlusion, but you can see it creates this kind of like nice, cool shaded effect. I do not think I'm gonna have that on though. So I'm just going to turn that off because we don't need that for these purposes. Okay, I'm going to quickly pull up a picture of the house from Stardew Valley, so I know what I'm looking at. Whenever you're making anything, I would just make sure you're using reference. I'm also, today, for the first time that I've been using this software, using a graphics tablet, which I guess now makes me a real artist, apparently. All jokes aside though, you can just use a mouse. Like, I used a mouse for the longest time to paint things. There's certainly nothing wrong with that at all. But today I'm going to be using my tablet. And, okay, so I have a picture here. If you're not sure what this house looks like in-game, let me quickly show you. It looks like this guy. Pretty simple looking, quite like a nice, cozy looking farmhouse. Just wood, tiled roofs, bit of wear and tear, and some bricks. So we're just going to go ahead and paint some of that in. Okay, so let's start. I've combined these. I've combined this house into like the relevant parts, if that makes sense. So I've got all the walls in this object, the roof in this object, and the frames and so on. We won't actually be painting the windows because that's just glass. I'll just do that in Maya with a shader later. But I would encourage you to do that, right? Like, combine things that make sense, like all this base piece is one piece. But only if the materials are the same. Otherwise, you know, it can give you headaches later, or cause headaches later down the line when you're trying to paint. So let's have a look at what we can add. So if I click on these materials, it's going to bring up this preview. And if I open this up, you can now see it's showing us what that's going to look like on our model. Let me just reduce this size here. And then we can also, if we open up this little gizmo thing here, let's click that. Oh, why is that not working? Right click. If we open up that, we can adjust the scale of this as well, so it fits on the model differently. I think if I increase it this way, it decreases the size here. So the smaller the number, the greater the scale. So I may use this, but I think not because that's planks. So I might go for this one instead. Let me... oh, sometimes the gizmo kind of goes off screen and you have to bring it back. I think... yeah, there we go. Just press that button, I'll bring that back. So I could use this. I think it looks almost a little bit too cartoony though, so I'll probably just go for some other wood texture. Let's see what we got here. I'm not too sure about that. Let's see what else we have. Something like this. Oh, I think this might be a custom material. This is 8K. And you can see it's looking really, really funky at the moment. It's just probably because the depth is way too high. Maybe... sometimes what you have to do as well is edit these materials. Just looking at the reference, it's kind of like a orangey wood. So I think I might go with this. And let's rotate it. So the wood grain is going up the planks, which makes more sense. And then I think let's reduce the scale a tad to something not too repetitive, maybe something like this. That looks pretty good to me. And then once we're done with the preview, we can then go and start putting our texture on. So what I like to do to begin with, just to get things just on there, is I'll rename this layer to like base 001 or something like that. And then this would where I just like block out the materials. So I want to go into the object mode there within the fill tool and then select everything that I want this to be the same color wood. So you can see that I've just accidentally put it on the roof. We don't actually want to do that. One thing I am going to do first, actually, that I forgot, is I'm going to just go into the Smart Material Editor, and in here we can make little changes. So there's a whole bunch of different things we can adjust, but I want to add a bit more color to this wood to make it more like the house in Stardew Valley. So nothing crazy, but just give it a bit more of an orange tone. Let's see if we can get that right. It's kind of a tough color to match, looking at it. something like this, maybe. Maybe a bit brighter. A bit more yellow. Yeah, maybe something like that. And then I can go ahead and save this as a new material, so it doesn't overwrite our original. And then now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and fill these in. So I want to do the walls, because that will be that wood material. And you can see that's gone and stuck it all everywhere on the house. I will do the... what will I do next? The base as well. So we come down here and go to base, press OK. Something like that. And I think as well, I'll do it on this frame here. That should just work. Okay, that doesn't always work if you just click on something. I think I'll do it on the frames. Actually, you know what? No, we'll make those a different color. Maybe, what if we make those a darker red? Or darker reddish wood. That could look quite cool. Okay, I like this material, but I think I'm going to edit. You see it has this kind of like white looking effect on the edges. That's like some of the edge effects. I don't always like that too much. I think I'm going to just turn that off. We just turn the degree down on here. Then save that as a new material. Then... okay, cool. Then let's bring this gizmo back in line, just so I can see which direction that's going in. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. And I like the scale. Okay, so let's also add that to our frames. Okay, cool. Just so everything's not exactly the same material, otherwise I think it gets a bit boring. The door, I think I will... what color can we make the door? Do we use the same wood? Maybe... what if we go for a plank material instead? No, you know what, actually, I think I'll just make it the same material. Okay, so let's go ahead and fill in the door as well. Door. Okay, there we go, cool. For the roof, so that's going to be some sort of like red tile. I don't have... I think by default, there isn't really a stone material in this software, in 3D Coat. So... see, I have a tiles one here, but I think this is a material I added myself. So what we might have to do is, unless there's a nice cartoony stone material here, but I think it'll be the wrong color. This might work pretty well for the bricks, actually. Well, I'm wondering now whether or not we should just use the cartoony wood texture, but it does look very, I think it's not good for like smaller scale stuff like this. Like if you were painting an individual wooden plank, it might be okay. But not so much for this. Maybe for the roof this could work, if I edit this material a bit. Like what if we turn off some of the edge scattering a bit? Something like this, and then if we change the color, I think it'll be this. No, not that. Change this color? No, not that one either. Okay. Ah, okay, here we go. So if we change the color to something more of like a orangey red, because that's sort of what we have in the Stardew Valley house. Maybe something like... something like this. And then if we also change the... actually, you know, I think I'll just get rid of this edge scattering altogether. Okay, so we'll save that as a new material again. And then I think we also want to make this look a bit smaller. So I'll scale it into something like this. Okay, that looks cool to me. And then we'll go ahead and fill that in. So all I'm really doing here, like I was saying, is I'm just filling in the... I'm just filling in the like blocking out the materials, and then what we'll do is we'll go in afterwards and then flesh out more of the materials, add a bit of dirt, things like that, wear and tear, because we just want the base material on there first, right? Like, it's the same when you're modeling something in 3D. You always want to start off like as simply as possible, just to make sure that things are, you know, you want to start as, like, stay as simple as possible for as long as possible, right? And then layer up detail and things like that. Okay, I think I'll use this material as well for the bricks on the chimney. Let's bring back this edge scattering again a bit, but I do like some of that actually on the bricks. That looks kind of cool, I think. But then maybe we'll reduce the scale of that for the bricks too. Down to something like this. That looks pretty cool. It's a shame there's not a better cartoony wood material. I could go ahead and make my own, but I think for this tutorial, or not so much tutorial, but for this video, we don't really have the time. Maybe we'll do that in a separate video on making materials. Okay, that looks pretty cool. And then next, we just need to do these wooden logs. So I might use this material for the logs. That could look cool. Maybe if we turn down this... No, that doesn't do so much. I'm just trying to get rid of some of that dirt. There we go. Something like that, maybe. Let's save that as a new material. Then... Okay, let's see what this will look like. Okay, cool. And then ordinarily you'd have to do this like one by one, right? But because I've combined all the logs, I can just go to logs and then just fill, and then bam. Okay, that's got a bunch of texture on it now. And I think what I will do is maybe hide the windows for now, because we don't really need to see that. And we're going to just be doing that in Blender anyway. Okay, so now that we've done this, what I will do is I will create a new layer and just call this dirt. And you'll end up having so many different layers, right? Like if you've ever done painting in Photoshop, you will know that, or any other software really that's layer-based, you will know that you end up having a lot of different layers. I've just gone and locked our base layer so that we don't accidentally edit any of that or change anything, because I think I'm happy with that. I'd rather not go back and edit that. So I think for now, I will just go and start painting in some dirt. So I have a bunch of different materials in here because I've gone and edited a lot of the base ones. 3D Coat has a bunch of built-in dirt shaders which will look at your curvature and ambient occlusion maps and will then place them in areas that it thinks it should go, and then you can adjust this too. And there's a few different types. You've got like standard dirt, dust. Some of these effects end up looking a bit too much, like that, right? That looks crazy, like the house is completely caked in mud. I would be livid. That one looks pretty cool. Okay, that's the material I was using for something else. Then again, this as well, like how did that even happen? Oh god. I don't really want to know what happened there. Okay, maybe with this one, we'll start with this and add a bit of dirt. And then you just got to think like where you would find the dirt, and this is, we're not going into too much depth, I suppose, in this video, but you just got to think where it would go and then just start sort of like building it up, right? Like you'd get it on the base where things contact like this around the floor, right? If you think water's running off of this and it's probably like trickling down the roof, so we might have like some streaks coming down the planks of the wood, and then it collects down here and in like the creases and things like that. So I think we're going to start adding just some dirt on some of these planks if I go into the brush tool. And then you can change your like brush type here as well. I normally just, when I'm adding dirt, I'll go with like a softer brush like this. If I just reduce the scale a little bit to something like this, and then now what we can do is we can go in and start painting. I'm going to reduce the depth down to 0 because I don't really want any bump on this. And then also just turn off steady stroke because that can be a bit of a pain. Okay, cool. What I like to do is kind of just like place it on liberally to begin with, because you can always go back in and take it off. I think it's Adam Savage. I'm sure all of you know who that is. He did Mythbusters, and he worked at, you know, ILM and various other studios doing creating models, right, and doing painting. And that's like how I think he got his start, and he's done a lot of like different videos on that. And one of the things that he said that really stuck out to me is that you like add on more than you think you need and take it away, and then just layer it up. Like, don't just do one pass and be like, oh, okay, now we're done. Like, really start and just like layer it on thick, and then scale it back, and then just repeat that process. And then that will help get like a more realistic effect. Because if you think about it, it makes sense too, because, you know, let's say this house gets dirty over time, as all things outside tend to do, especially houses. Then like someone comes, the owner of the house maybe comes and cleans it, but then maybe they don't get everything, right? And then it gets dirty again, they come back and clean it again, and then just like it builds up in these little crevices, and they don't always get it. And then I think it ends up just looking more natural that way if you do it like that. So we'll just get some in there. Like, maybe we'll really just build it up into crevices of everything. Just kind of really like probably overdoing it, to be honest. I think if your house is this dirty, it is either abandoned or you need to get up and clean it, because that is terrible. Okay, and then what I can do is I can go to the eraser brush, and then with this I don't really like to just use the round brush because I feel like it looks a bit unnatural. I'll use something, there's one I always like to go to, this one I think. I'll use this brush because it has a bit of a like less uniform shape, and then I'll just start erasing bits. Maybe I'll increase the scale a little bit. I'll just start bringing it back. And then I also like to turn the transparency down to something like 25, just because that helps. Maybe we'll put it up to 50, just so it doesn't take away absolutely everything, but it takes away most of it. And I kind of want to just keep it in those like cracks. And this process can take a really, really long time, but I think it's quite fun and rewarding. Like, when I first got into this, I really liked modeling more than texturing, and I think that's just because I didn't have a lot of experience doing texture. But now, honestly, like, I think I like texturing more than I like modeling. I feel like it adds so much more to the overall look. I still really, really enjoy modeling, but like texturing is just, it can be quite a lot of fun. Okay, so there we go. So that's looking a little bit less extreme, but it's still kind of like collecting, at least how I would expect it to collect, I think. Let's take a bit more of that back. And you can see what that's done, right? Like, it's, you still have like the dirt, but it's not as extreme looking, and I've kind of left it in some of the like the cracks and crevices. And then all we do is we just go back in again with the same dirt material. I'm just gonna lather that on. Even in here, I feel like under there we're gonna get a lot of dirt. Some of it got on the log, but that's okay. I can always go back and edit it. Just really pile that on. And then again, we come back with the eraser and just start scaling it back a bit. Not being too like neat with it, but just pulling it back. And then keeping some of that in the creases. This process can take quite a long time, so you need to be patient. But I think if you get used to it, it is quite fun. So what I'll normally do is I'll do like a general pass of this, like spend a while doing this, and then I'll then start getting in and painting like more specific wear and tear. So I might do this for a while, and then I might start painting in like leaks coming down from the roof, and then you just build it up and just, you know, see what makes sense. One of the like a really good thing to do, and I mentioned this like so many times in our videos, is just look at reference, just to see what this would actually look like in a real life setting. Like, even if you're painting something that's cartoony, it still has to look, I would say, realistic. in the way it's done. Like, yes, you want it to look stylized, but it should, I think, still be grounded in reality to some degree, because it just is what makes sense to us, and it's what we expect to see, I think, and it ends up looking more natural, right? Like, if you just had, like, dirt in places, it didn't make sense whatsoever, right? If you had footprints on the roof, you might have footprints on the roof, maybe someone went up there with muddy boots, but, you know, where would you expect muddy footprints to be? Probably coming up the steps and towards the door. I like adding stuff like that as well, like little muddy footprints. Like for this house, we'll probably do that. Because it just kind of helps to tell a story, which I think is cool. I'm thinking about it now. I'm not too fond of this wood material. It looks quite odd with the tiles, but we'll go with it and we'll see what we can do. I think with the shader in Maya, we can probably fix a lot of this and make this look more stylized. But yeah, you get the idea, I think. Just, you know what, actually, I think what I'll do is I will increase the size of this brush even more, and then we're just really gonna like get it there. And then if you're wondering why it's like, no, I'm doing it here and nothing's happening, it's because the way it decides where to put dirt and where not to put dirt is kind of based on, like I was saying, the Abilene occlusion and the curvature pass. Like, I could go ahead and adjust this material so that we can put dirt in more places. In fact, I'll show you how to do that now. Like, if I preview it on the object, come over to Smart Material Editor, and then under degree, if I increase that, you can see we could just cover it in dirt completely. This will allow us to add it in more places. So, and then we can go and take it back. Okay. That is adding some sort of weird effect for some reason. Okay, we might just have to... It's adding like a weird white rim to things. But that's okay. Okay, we'll just really get that on there. Just cover this in dirt. Looks like someone did this on purpose. Or this house has been not lived in for, who knows, 10, 25 years. And then we'll go back in and just start removing some of this. But yeah, I think you get the idea. So what I'll probably do is I will keep texturing this, speed up the video a little bit, and then we'll cut to when we do something different. Okay, so I've gone through and I've painted dirt onto all of the wooden planks. You can see I've kind of just put it in the crevices. So yeah, I was just using the process I was talking about where I really kind of lathered it on and then just erased it back. And now we've got this kind of nice like streaky looking effect going from like top to bottom. So you're getting more dirt like up here, and then it's like streaking down, and then there's some collecting in the base, which I think looks quite nice. I'm going to go back now into another time lapse while I put some dirt. Sorry, it's pretty late in the day. Dirt and on the roof and the chimney as well. Okay, so I've gone and added some dirt to the roof and the chimney, and I think this is a pretty good sort of decent start for the dirt pass. What I'm going to add now is some more like specific leaks coming down from the top of the roof, like some long strands, particularly around the windows, and maybe on the chimney as well. I'll just quickly remove some of this. This is maybe looking a bit too much. Okay, so there's a couple different ways we can do that. We could go and just paint it completely by hand with one of the color brushes, but I think I am going to use the leaks tool, or one of the leaks materials, So this right now is fluorescent green. It looks like our house has been attacked by some kind of weird gloop creature. So obviously we don't want that. We want this to look more like mud or like a buildup of rain or something like that. So instead we're going to change this to like a pretty dark brownish color. Something like that. And then I'm also just going to reduce the depth because I don't want this to have any bump on it. It will be way too small really to see that. And then that's looking a little bit like oil or gravy. So maybe I'll make that a bit darker still. Something like this. And then we'll go ahead and just save that as a new material. Oh, I accidentally saved over that. That's okay. You can always go back and change that later. What I'll then do is bring this back like we've been doing. Bring the gizmo. Bring the, what's it called? The preview back up. And then I'm going to just adjust the scale to make this a decent bit smaller. Maybe not quite that small. But quite a bit of a smaller size. Maybe something like that. Okay, and then what I might also do is just adjust the roughness, because I don't want this to look like leaky oil. Maybe make this up to something like 67. Because we want this to look quite dry and old, rather than like fresh grime. So I'll go ahead and save that. Okay, so I'm just going to reduce the brush size a bit, and then we'll start painting in. Oh, never mind, we're going to put this on a new layer, otherwise it's going to erase what we've already done. So we'll just call this something like Leaks 001. And then we will just start putting some of these in. They might actually still be a bit too big. Maybe we'll go and edit this a little bit more. Something like this maybe. Then let's see if we can do anything with the actual amount. Maybe something like this. That might look a bit extreme, but again we can always go and take it back a bit. Okay, let's start painting some of this in. Okay, there we go, that's a bit of a better scale I think. And then we can just have some of these come down, and that will look quite nice, I think. Just like so. Okay. I'll just put them all in the crevices here, just where you'd expect things to leak, right? Because if you imagine this house is getting rained on, the water's going to accumulate on the tiles and then come down, like the water won't leak upwards. So you probably won't have any of this coming up from the bottom like this. Like this will all just be coming from the top and higher points, right? Maybe some under the window. But again, this is looking quite, maybe a bit over the top, so I think we will definitely scale this back some. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And then I will go back in with the eraser tool, and then we will just pull these back a bit. So they are not quite as obvious, because it's looking a bit too sort of destitute and run down. We want it to look worn, really, not abandoned. It really depends what kind of look you're going for. Like, if you wanted this to look completely abandoned, then you like, by all means, go way over the top, you know. It depends how long it's been abandoned for. You know, if you have a bit of a story behind your house or whatever you're making, then, you know, just make whatever is appropriate. I think for this, that's looking a bit better. For this, I just want it to look like a warm old house rather than something that's abandoned. You might even say this grime's a bit too much, but I like it. Okay, let's get a bit more in. We'll put some underneath the roof here. Maybe have some streaks come down further than others. Have this one come down quite far. Try to make it random as well. Like, it's quite hard. Like, put it in places that make sense, but don't make it look too even or like purposeful. I think that's quite hard, because naturally, I think our brain is like orientated towards making things look even, just because it's pleasing to us. I guess I'm not completely sure. At least I have a hard time making things not look even sometimes. So I kind of constantly have to tell myself, oh no, this looks too even. If I end up making something, you know, sometimes just for example, like I'll be doing this, and I'll do this, and then this, and then this, and you can see it's doing it like an even pattern. It's like low, high, sorry, like far down, not so far down, not so far down, and it just starts repeating. So I sometimes catch myself doing that and be like, oh no, hang on a second, I need to go back and edit some of this to make it look less uniform, because my brain has just automatically decided that it wants it to look more even, I guess. You know, maybe that's just me, but if you do catch yourself doing that, just like think in your mind, or like just consciously pay attention to what you're doing, and try to make things look as, I guess, uneven as possible. You know, things might follow a certain pattern, like they might come along the wood grain just because, like, when water's running, things like that, it tends to take the path of least resistance. But don't make things look too, like, pre-planned, if that makes sense. You want this house to look like it's been naturally weathered, or whatever you're texturing, not like, you know, someone's gone in and painted the weathering on, which I think is quite hard to do, and it's definitely something I probably still have to work on quite a lot. But I think if you make sure that it doesn't look too purposeful, then you will get quite a natural looking effect. At least that's what I was taught from when I did this at uni, and various different creators that I follow online. Particularly Adam Savage again. He's got a bunch of great videos. He doesn't do this in 3D, but like obviously he's a fantastic artist and creator and builder. And he's done various different videos where he talks about like painting and weathering various different assets. Like I think he made one that was really cool. It was just like a old school container, like a case of some sort. And I think he spent quite a while just weathering it and beating it up to make it like random and worn as possible, because it was obviously like quite a new product, so quite a new item, so it's quite difficult to make a new item look worn like actual, you know, the years and time does. But he was saying he would just walk past things. He would just walk past this case, right, that he was weathering over time, and just like occasionally just hit it with a hammer or knock it or something like that, just to try and make it look as like naturally weathered and beat up as possible. Obviously, you know, maybe you don't want to spend like weeks to months doing this, but it's just like kind of, I think, general good advice to follow when you're doing stuff like this. Should we have some leaks here? Maybe a few, maybe a little bit. Like the shader's looking a bit, or the material's looking a bit funny here. It's very intense, so we'll really have to scale that back. But yeah, if you haven't watched those videos on Adam Savage, you know, like even though he's not doing 3D, it still applies. It's the same principles. Like he's done, I can't remember what they were called off the top of my head, but he's got a fair few videos now where he like paints and weathers things, from like miniature spaceships to that suitcase thing I was talking about. If you want to get into like doing 3D art and you want to do texture painting, I would massively encourage you to watch that video, because you will learn a lot from him on that, I think. And I think even though it's not 3D, like I was saying, the principles still apply, and you can then apply that to your 3D and make your 3D look better as a result. Okay, I'm going to go back and put this in a time-lapse again while I do the rest of these leaks, and I will come back to you when that's done. Okay, so I finished adding the leaks to the roof, and this is just sort of a render view that you can do with the native render within 3D Coat, and you can see it's not looking too bad. It's certainly looking a lot more natural now, like something that's actually been outside for quite a while, like a bit of an older structure with all this dirt we've added. I think we could still do quite a bit to this. We don't really have anything in the way of like roughness breakup. By that I mean the whole surface looks very like equally rough. Like there's no like shininess to it. everything just seems to be the same, like matte looking material. So I think what I'll do is I'll come back into the paint room and then we'll add some roughness breakup. So what I like to do with that is actually have a brand new layer called roughness, and I will add materials on top of this to help add some of that breakup. So I think what I'll do is I'll add something on the roof, like maybe it rained a couple days ago and it's cold outside and it hasn't properly dried, something like that. I think if we add that kind of effect to the roof, that could look quite nice. So what I'll do is I will take one of the dirt materials, we'll just go into the brush tool and we'll preview this, and we'll find one that sort of looks like it could give us quite a nice effect. Kind of like a splotchy dirt shader. Maybe something like this. Okay, we'll open up the Smart Material Editor, and what I'll do is I'm going to turn off the opacity, right, because we don't need that. What I will then turn down is the roughness. So you can see what's happening now is it's not so much the color, but it's adding some like wetness to it. If you can see that, it's adding some shine. So I'm going to turn that all the way down to 0, and we can kind of control how rough that is just by erasing it or modifying things here. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to mess around with this degree a little bit, just to see what I can get that to look like. Maybe we'll put that to 2.5. Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, and we'll save that as a new material. And then what I'm going to do is start again, just like everything else, painting some of this on to the roof. Right, and you can see now that's giving us like some kind of like roughness breakup. It's making some things look a little wet. So I think we'll just kind of do that. Maybe down here, in areas where you think it would make sense for some of like the moisture to remain. Not everywhere, just in some parts. And this will just like, when she comes around the time, this will just help give it so much more life because it will look less uniform, right? And that's what a lot of this is about, is just making it look less uniform. If you're wondering why sometimes when I paint here, it changes elsewhere, I think there's some issues with the UVs. We won't get into that in this video, but that's probably because something messed up a little bit there. So that's something I'll have to go and fix. But don't worry about that for the time being. Okay, let's paint some of that on. In fact, you know what, let's just layer it all up. Just get it all on there. So already that's looking quite a bit nicer. So I'm then going to go back in with the erase tool and then just get rid of some of this. Just like we did with the leaks and the dirt. Just going to go in. Particularly I'm going to remove some of these funky looking artifacts. That's just an issue with the UVs, I suspect. But just so it doesn't look, you see now when I do this, you're getting some nice like shading difference, which looks quite cool. Just taking some of this back. Like so. If your hand isn't hurting after doing this for a while, maybe you're not trying hard enough. I'm not saying you should hurt yourself, by the way. Please, God, no. But maybe it's just me whenever I'm doing this. Maybe it's because I'm not used to using a tablet. My hand starts to ache after a while, particularly around like my farm area. I think it's just the constant... It's this, erasing it, I think. It's the constant like clicking or tapping on the tablet. Like the repetitive motion of it. Remember to take breaks, guys. You don't want to get RSI, like repetitive strain repetitive strain injury, because it is real. I definitely experienced it throughout the time that I worked in film and TV. If you're modeling for so many hours straight, eventually your fingers are probably going to start aching. Okay, so you can see that's adding kind of like a nice shiny effect. If I go back to the render view now, like from a certain angle, that's now looking way more interesting, right? Like we have the dirt, we have this now like nice kind of specular breakup. That's looking a lot more interesting than just the flat house. So what I'm going to do is, you guessed it, go back into another time lapse and add the rest of this, and then I'll come back once I've added all that. Okay, so I finished adding some roughness breakup to the wood, at least on this side. I figure, I like to imagine the rain was coming in sort of where my mouse is pointing, so most of it hit this side, and then this side sort of has dried off a bit more, except for the roof, just because I figured that would probably, you know, transition over to that side a bit. So I'm happy with that. I think the last thing I'm going to add is, or one of the last things I'm going to add is a bit of like green tint. Because if you've ever seen, like if something's out in nature for a while, particularly if it's made of wood, or anything really, it tends to gradually build up some like fungusy, mossy, like naturey bits. That's probably the worst way to describe it. But you know what I mean, right? If you look at roofs of houses, particularly where I am in the UK where it rains a lot, you may have heard, a lot of the roofs of houses, the slanted roofs, end up getting quite a lot of moss and like green tinge to them. And I think that looks quite cool, particularly in like rainy, wet environments, which is where I guess this house would be, due to the slanted roof. You'd get it like for sure in the crevices. So the way I'm going to do that is we're actually going to take another dirt material. I'm going to get our brush tool, just preview that, and I am going to find one that has a pattern that I like, and then all we're going to do is we're going to change the color to green. Maybe something like this dust one. If I come up to Smart Material Editor, we'll just see which one gives it its color. Is it that one? Or is it this one? This one. Okay. Now we're going to want to make like kind of a nice muted looking green. Something not too neon, but with quite a dark color. Maybe something like that. Yeah, that looks good to me. Okay, and then maybe we'll just reduce the degree a tad. All this is adjusting is, you know, how much of it shows up. Reduce it to something like this, and we'll save that as a new material. And then, like with all the other stages, you might think it's getting somewhat repetitive because it's like, oh, you know, you have to paint this, take it back, take it, but that's kind of texture painting really in a nutshell, right? You're just like layering things up. And this is by no means like just the be-all end-all video on it, but this is just sort of like a brief introduction into how we do things. I think generally I would take a lot longer for this kind of model, but this is, you know, just for the sake of this video, we're speeding things up quite a bit. If I go ahead and make a new layer, and we're just going to call this green bits or something like that. You know what, actually let's be a bit more sensible and call it moss 001. If you're wondering why I put 001 on the end of the thing, it's just because sometimes you might have 2 moss layers or 2 leeks layers, and then that way you can differentiate your layers. Anyway, let's start painting on our moss. So I am just going to slap this pretty much everywhere I think it would be, and honestly it would probably end up being on a lot of the roof, particularly in the crevices again where the dirt is. You know, but just kind of like, if you are doing this as well, just kind of go wild with it. Put it where you like. You know, I would tend to try and put it in areas that are a bit more natural, but you certainly don't have to do that. Let's do something like that. And then again, what we'll do is we'll just take some of that back. And I think for this time, I'll use a different brush. We'll go with something like this one, and just scale that up a bit, just to maybe make the transitions look a bit more natural and less like streaks. Something like this. I feel like a lot of it... The reason why I think this kind of like mossy gunk tends to collect in the crevices is because that's where all the water builds up, right? But you will get some just sticking to the surface. Like you probably get a lot of it in the cracks here. And like we could go in really fine and start like adding little tiny minute details in the gaps between the tiles, and if you really wanted to go all out and make like an amazing looking asset, that's absolutely what you'd want to do. But I think just for the sake of this video, we're just gonna like get the point across and quickly show you what we would do. So something like that looks pretty cool to me. We'll go ahead and do a quick test render of that just to see what that looks like. And then it's just adding like some color breakup as well, right? Like it looks a little bit more interesting than just the roof tile color, and it's adding to the dirt as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and time lapse that, and then once I've done, I'll come back. Okay, I'm still adding some of the moss here, but one of the areas I'm going to particularly pay closest attention to is where anything meets the ground, or the ground, right? So where the walls of the house here contact the floor, I feel like there's probably going to be a lot more there, just because naturally water is going to build up there. And especially down here as well, like this is the point where it will contact the ground, and if like this is a farmhouse, like the farmhouse from Stardew Valley, this is the easiest point for plants and nature to start growing up from, right? Because this is literally contacting the earth, and if you imagine if this is in like an environment setting, there's going to be a lot of grass and other plants around here, and it's just naturally going to start climbing up. So I'm going to particularly, this is where it will probably be outside of the roof. This is where I'll put on this mossy greeny bits, the heaviest, is down towards the base here where it contacts the ground. At least that's where it makes the most sense to me. Okay, and that is all the mossy greeny bits painted on. You can see I put a lot of it down at the base here where it will probably be contacting the ground. When you're doing your model, you can go in and paint this up a lot more. I think if I had more time, I would love to just go in and start painting in a lot of like extra little details and all the little creaks and crevices. Maybe we can do an even longer video in the future where we kind of show you on a smaller scale asset like how we would really like paint that up. But this is just sort of a brief overview, a brief idea of sort of what we do and how we layer up these different materials and effects just to kind of create a finished model. And we'll show you a before and after at the end. But this really does help. Like the texturing really like brings the model to life, right? Without it, it just looks very plain. Which is, I think, one of the reasons why I enjoy so much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to export these texture maps, bring these into Maya, create a window shader, and I'll come back to you when that is done. Okay, so we're back. I've added the material to our house in Maya. Pretty straightforward, just an AI standard surface. We've got the diffuse or the color going into the base color, the roughness into the roughness, and the normal into the normal map, and so on. Just free shaders, free texture files onto one shader, just for the sake of this video. Then we've got an HDRI, just sort of like a nice outdoor environment, and then I will show you what this looks like rendered. Let's go ahead and hit the render button. And I've added just a basic glass material to the windows. So you can see, this is what it looks like rendered in Arnold. So we've got our like specular breakup on the roof. You can see all our like dirt and moss that we added, and this is the final result. And you know, I don't think it looks too bad. I think given more time, we could go in and like really add a lot of fine detail to this. But just for a quick asset, I don't think it's too bad. Especially if we come from up here, you can see like the nice specular breakup on the top of the roof. So yeah, if you want to give your own hand at this and get 3D Coat, I believe they still have a demo, or at least they used to, and try texturing some of your models. And if you want to share that with us, like, we'd be happy to have a look at it. Post it in the comments. And yeah, we hope you have enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Hey, just as an extra note, if you want to see us make this pixelated like in the actual Stardew Valley game, comment below.